time to move on to our next speaker. Before I give the official blurb, I'm lucky enough I haven't never worked with him, but just the loveliest guy in the industry, I think. Sadly, not very good looking, but you can't get everything. But no, he is very generous. And his name is Mike Tosetto. He's the director and founder of Never Sit Still, a Sydney-based motion design studio, an awarded designer. Bullshit. His work has featured in some of the industry's most respected design blogs and publications. Mike is an active member of the design community and chair of the New South Wales Council for AGDA. He regularly speaks at industry events, guest lectures for design colleges, and teaches motion graphics classes and workshops. And he was generous to do those lovely titles for us with Lux. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the mic, Mike Tosetto.
Hi everyone. It's great to be here. Yeah, it's really, really good to be here. And how good is this? Waving bear. Big thanks to James and Kim for having me. It's really, really good to be here. I know how hard you guys work, yourself and Kim, to put this on. So yeah, awesome. Awesome to finally be here. It feels like it's been a long time coming. Got to say a massive thanks to Giphy. This presentation is filled with them, and it's just been an endless supply of GIFs. It's hard to choose which ones to put in the presentation, but you know, I think they're pretty good. My name's Mike Tosetto. I'm the director and founder of Never Sit Still. We're a motion graphics studio based in Sydney, and we specialize in 2D and 3D motion graphics for a brand. So today, I'm going to talk about a topic that I think we can all relate to, which is deadlines and dating. Because I think these sorts of things, we're really, really good at heroing work. We're really good at celebrating work. We're really good at showing off our portfolios. And we also share a lot of process, like Mel just did, which is really awesome. We all leave super inspired, but we don't really talk about work-life balance and how hard it is to have a normal life in this industry. You all recognize this. So I think being a designer of any kind is hard enough. There's no cookie-cutter process for creativity, whether we're trying to, come up with good ideas or solve creative challenges. And animation takes time, lots of it. So I think it's particularly hard for us motion designers who are here in the room today. I know that breathing life into a character can take weeks, and also, I've been guilty of spending, weeks on less than 5 seconds of animation. Then there's 3D. Now, I've been using 3D for a while. It's probably been particularly hard this year, because I'm going to talk a little bit about working with Tim from Lux, who's, as we know, one of the best. So 3D is hard, no matter which way you skin it. Modeling, rigging, lighting, hair, cloth, dynamics. I mean, this is a small portion of what we're offered with a full 3D feature set. So it's hard and time consuming. So over the last year, I've been thinking about work-life balance a lot, because it's been something that I've really struggled with. And I don't even have kids, so I can only imagine how hard it is for you guys in this industry with a family. Going to rewind a little. Back to 2011, I spent 4 years at an agency called Interbrand, which is how I got into motion graphics for branding. This was the first agency that I worked at. I really enjoyed my time here, and I'm really grateful for it, because I feel like it set me up to do what I'm doing today. It was tough. I mean, it was incredibly hard work. I was quite literally strapped to my seat, as you can see from this photo here. What are you saying? So yeah, incredibly hard work. I mean, being at a place like this, I was talking to Vera about this last night. She's working at a branding studio, sort of branding digital studio called Love and Money, as the only motion designer. And I went through this at Interbrand. It's a blessing and a curse. So for any of you guys who are the only motion designers in their jobs right now, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. A blessing because you get to touch nearly every project in the studio, and a curse because you're the only motion designer, so no one actually knows what's involved in making things move on screen. That was definitely the wrong button.
Bloody Jesus. I knew someone would do it, but not this early on.
All right, we're back. So it's not that they didn't like motion, they loved it, but they just had no idea of what was actually involved. So it was baptism by fire. The first few months were really tough. I had creative directors, and they were awesome. I really loved the creative directors at this place. I loved the whole design team that I worked with. But they just dig out a White Stripes film clip and go, "Oh, check this. Can you do something like this?" The reference was just really tricky. And I was sort of in the earlier stages of my motion graphics career. But time went on and we got into a bit of a groove. And I think the two of us, you know, not just myself, but those guys as well, we started to realize how powerful motion design could actually be for branding. I had to throw at least one Venn diagram in here, right? This is really cool. If you're struggling to work it out, it's the beaver and the duck makes the platypus. Then the keytar thing. So here's my Venn diagram. So Interbrand was different to working at any other place I'd ever worked. So I came from a background in production. So, you know, at Interbrand, or most branding studios, how it usually works is while designers are trying to crack the new brand, you know, they're exploring typography, they're exploring graphics, they're exploring colors, they're exploring imagery. And I'm usually used to coming from production, being bolted on at the end as the motion designer. Whereas at Interbrand, I'd be thrown in right in there from the beginning. So during this conceptual stage, I was jamming on motion experiments alongside them. So I'd be doing something, logo would be changing, type would be changing, you know, typefaces, and it was a pretty crazy ride, but the motion was informing the design as much as the design was informing the motion. So it was a really interesting way to work. And I've really got to credit Chris McLean for this term. Chris McLean was one of my creative directors at Interbrand at the time. He's gone on now to be one of the ECDs, or the ECD at Gretel, alongside Ryan Moore, I think. I'm not sure if that's the right name, but Gretel have been doing amazing work, the Viceland rebrand. So Chris McLean used to call all these little motion experiments that we do. He'd call them basically, like the mechanics. We'd eventually work out the motion mechanics, which would be a little set of rules of what the motion could and couldn't do. And it was all these little tests that would lead to a motion system. This is still a term that we use today. Even in the studio, it never sits still. We call it the mechanics. It's something clients can understand. And I always say to the guys at work, like we always check each other against like buzzwords. We always say, could mum understand what we're saying? If mum can understand it, then we say it. We try not to waffle on with too much of this brand speak. So I want to talk about how this whole, you know, motion, or how the branding worked in a little nutshell. This is one of the projects that I worked on with Chris McLean, who I mentioned. So this was Opera Australia, old logo and new logo. What I loved about branding was it's about so much more than logos. It's about creating flexible identity systems based on what a brand is actually trying to communicate to the world. So the rebrand of Opera Australia was all about opening up opera and expanding opera to reveal it to new audiences. So you can see here in the identity, the O and the A expands, opening up and representing that opening up opera to new audiences. Going beyond the logo, this is some of the layouts, and you can see here how these vertical lines, they can change thickness, they can change length, they can change height, they can change vertical position to represent the music and then create interesting layouts. You can see how that extends, the O and the A extends across the brochure covers and the tickets. And then in the motion, you know, these lines can move at different speeds, they can change thicknesses, they can overlap each other, and they can wipe content in and out, revealing the diverse range of activities that, you know, Opera Australia represent. Thank you. So that little video was used for the launch of the new brand for Opera Australia, and that kind of summed up in a nutshell, you know, what the Opera Australia brand was all about. And these sorts of things were always great to play in presentations as well. You know, like we used to say, you could have a whole presentation deck full of 100 slides, and you can go into a presentation. We'd always try throwing the video, press play on the video, and it just almost immediately sells it. People really connect with motion. Another thing Chris McLean used to say was that motion's like, it's a shortcut to the soul. So I spent 4 years with these guys, and I got to work on some really cool projects. You know, amongst the corporate work, and we tried to make the best of the corporate work. We worked on some great work. We rebranded precincts, theatres and galleries, and we even went on to help Alzheimer's Australia raise an extra $300 million in funding. So it was a really inspiring place to work. But after 4 intense years together, with lots of late nights and lots of early mornings, probably a few too many, I decided that I wanted to play the field and go freelance. So going out freelance, I found new clients to be a bit like new relationships. Some of them were really clingy, and they wanted to talk on the phone all the time. And then others were really distant and played hard to get. This is still something that usually happens once the job's done and I'm trying to get the invoice paid. I'm always whining about invoices, late payments. I'm always chasing. Once it's hit that 30 days, I'm like a rash. So all these clients were different, with their own different their own unique sets of expectations. But unlike a monogamous relationship, with freelancing, you generally need to have a few different flings on the go to pay the bills. So while I was busy trying to woo, Fresh Prince. So while I was busy trying to woo new clients and impress them, I found it hard to find time for actual dating. I also wanted to get to know the community a little bit better, so I joined AGDA. For any of you guys who are unfamiliar with AGDA, AGDA are the Australian Graphic Design Association, and they're the peak national organisation that represent the Australian creative industry. They run lots of national events, they've got a strong community, and the AGDA Awards is actually happening tomorrow night. They run an annual awards show. So for any of you guys with entries in, I know there's a few of you here who are finalists, good luck. And for anyone that doesn't have entries in, get them in next year, because it's a great awards show, great thing to be a part of. So the AGDA Awards happens every year, and it's about documenting and recognising the best work in Australia at any given time. In 2015, it went from happening every 2 years to becoming an annual event. So to raise awareness of this change, a few studios were invited to create a new brand for the awards show. I was one of those studios to get involved with the motion alongside Garbett and End of Work. So I saw this as a really great opportunity for a couple of reasons. The first was that I love Garbett's work. If you guys are familiar with Garbett, really considered design and especially illustration, really beautiful work. And then End of Work are just a really progressive branding studio. So this was the new identity, and you can see it combines the AGDA A from the logo and the tetrahedron, which is the shape of an AGDA award. For any of you Cinema 4D users, the tetrahedron is available out of the box in Cinema 4D. Take a platonic object, set the type to tetra. But I didn't need to tell you guys that. So a range of collateral was produced for the new brand. There was a website, moleskins, event props, so all looking really cool. And of course, every new brand, as we know, needs an obligatory tote bag. And what we did was we decided to reach out to the creative community and ask for a range of creative responses in all disciplines, so across all disciplines, so graphic, digital, motion. And that was based on the question. The responses that we got back were based on the question, what does the pinnacle of design mean to you? This being the pinnacle, a glass award that's only given out to 95, a score of 95 or above. So they're very rare and very really special award to get. So the pinnacle being the highest AGDA award you can receive. And I was blown away by the response. Some of you guys sitting out there right now, some of this is your work. The response that we got from the community was just awesome. So many people got amongst it in motion. We had responses from some of the best studios in motion graphics, all Australian, right down to a high school student from a guy who was doing a little bit of work experience with me at the time. So that was really, really cool. So this is the list of people. Some of you guys are here. I just want to, on behalf of AGDA, say thank you to all of you, because it's so awesome to see people submitting this work, raising the bar and, basically you're bridging the community and bringing the community together. You see the exact same thing with the Node idents, and I bet you guys feel exactly the same, James and Kim, with all the idents that you get. It's just so good to see people submitting amazing work for the last 2 years. And that was exactly the push that AGDA needed, or motion needed, to become a recognised category, its own category in the AGDA Awards. Of course, when I went out and asked studios if they would make a creative response, I couldn't ask them without showing that I'd done one, showing that I had a bit of skin in the game. So this was the one that I'd made to kick things off. Cool, thank you. And this is how I got to meet Tim Clapham from Lux. So most of you guys would be familiar with Tim, or especially his work. So Tim, over the years, has worked with the likes of Raoul Marx and Patrick Clare. Raoul, who was here as the last speaker in conversation with James last year. He's also worked with, the guys at Kinthings, Ash Boland's infamous Numeric studio. Recently, he works with Buck on an awesome project. You guys might have seen the Holden 7-year warranty ad that's on TV at the moment. So really, really awesome. And Tim was one of the first people that I asked to do a creative response, and I couldn't believe that he said yes. I didn't know Tim at this stage. little plug for Tim. Tim runs a training site called Hello Lux, so he spoke here last year at Node. Hello Lux is an awesome training site, especially for Cinema 4D. I've learned most of what I know in Cinema 4D from this training. So it was around this time that I was organising an AGDA event called VFX Motion and Sound. And at the same time, I sort of said to Tim, hey, how about you do a creative response? I was like, hey, how about you come talk at this event? And he was up for it. So it was cool. And we struck up a friendship, and we've been working together ever since. Not long after that, Adobe got in touch with me and said, through AGDA, and they asked if I wanted to get involved in making the opening titles for Make It 2016. And I thought, wow, this is an awesome opportunity. And I thought I'd reach out to Tim and see if he was up for getting involved and collaborating on it. And he was, which was really cool. And it went really well, so I guess that was the start of why we went on working together. So a couple of years in, I felt like I'd started to settle down. I'm feeling relaxed. And I felt like a lot of this flirting with new clients had started to turn into more meaningful relationships. I'd employed a full-time motion designer. This is Barney. He's come down from Sydney today. So massive shout out to Barney, absolute legend. And it's a good time to mention that Phil Tibbles, this is Phil, he's here today as well. Never Sit Still, represent. So Phil's joined the ranks about a month ago. So really awesome to have Phil on board. So we've also built our own PCs for that little bit of extra grunt. We'd moved out of my home studio. We now had a trendy office space in Surrey Hills. We were leasing off an agency called Bullet. So it felt like it was official. More than one of us. We had a space, we were a studio. This was the real deal. So with the business under control, I felt like it was time to get back out there and give the dating apps a whirl. So for busy people, dating apps make it relatively easy to hook up a date, with people within a certain radius. But the reality is quite the contrary. It's like a minefield out there. For anyone that's used these apps, dodging bullets. And what they do really well is they simulate the feeling of rejection without having to leave the comfort of your own home. But it's a numbers game. And the more people you meet, the more chance you've got of meeting Mrs. Right. So I ironed a few shirts and I got myself back out there. Backing it up every second night, going on a date, again, after long days in the studio was exhausting. And I was meeting some interesting people. But I wasn't meeting someone special. So while the love life left a little to be desired, work was going pretty well. So we'd been rebranded by this stage. A really good friend of mine, Christopher Doyle, he's an amazing brand designer. We actually share our space with Chris Doyle. Chris had rebranded us and renamed us as Never Sit Still. So Never Sit Still being all about the constant progression of craft and knowledge, and that's represented in that brand, which also becomes, that's the lockup of the logo, but also essentially our flexible identity system that with the words in different positions on the screen, that represents, movement and things being in motion. Chris's work is amazing. Stunning work comes out of his studio. If you're not familiar with him, check him out. So our new brand was stripped back and simple to really hero the work. And I wanted our new brand to be different to most motion sites. So I wanted it to have a real focus on language. And this is Chris Doyle's specialty. These are some of the awesome posters that we've got up in our studio. And you can see the tone of voice. This is our process. This is what Chris wrote for us for process. And Chris is addicted to lists. So he gave us a list, which we love. So Never Sit Still, we make a range of different types of motion graphics, stings, bumpers, explainers, brand stories. If it moves, we'll generally get amongst it and make it. But we specialize in motion for brand. So this is something I bang on about quite a bit in these talks, that we're motion designers for brand. So what exactly does it mean when I say that? It means that I think we make meaningful motion. And when we work with branding agencies and brand studios, generally our motion is always based on we make our motion decisions based on what the brand is trying to say, what it's trying to communicate to the world. So we don't just make things move from A to B, make pretty motion just for the sake of it. We try and give it meaning. We work with a range of direct clients and agencies, and we're really comfortable working with both. We cut a new reel not long ago. Smith & Wesson did the music and sound. They were awesome. They got us in the studio with them, jamming out on the synths. So this will give you a bit of an idea of the work we do on a day-to-day basis. Oh, cheers. So about a year ago, we moved into this space. This is in Camperdown, in Sydney's inner west. Really great space. It's called the Burrows. We're located up on the mezzanine, just up here. This is our little space. And like I said, we share this space with Christopher Doyle & Co., another brand studio, and also an events company have a space downstairs, and they're called Bellade Events. So I jumped the gun on this one. We moved here to start a different kind of relationship altogether, this time not with new clients, but with new companies. A little bit of a threesome, you know, a menage a trois, perhaps. This was a collective that we wanted to kick off to take on bigger and more brand-focused work. Baxter Studios been a little branding studio that we're going to join myself and Lux. So Never Sit Still, been more focused, you know, a little bit of the 3D, more focused in the 2D world, more After Effects, specialized in brand. Lux, who, as you know, do the more high-end 3D work, and then Baxter Studios, more brand design. So we thought it would be a really cool opportunity to collaborate and kick off a little collective. Unfortunately, you know, threesomes can get a little awkward. So Baxter Studios have left us, but you know, we're all still good mates. And Lux have never Sit Still have continued working with Lux. I've got to be honest, my last year has been tough. It's been a real mungle. Probably the reason why this talk is about deadlines and dating and burnout. So it's been really tough. It's been hard. I guess working with Tim, I've been just way out of my comfort zone, my comfort level on every project. I've been out of my depth. Like every project that we work on is so, you know, technically challenging, which is not a bad place to be, but it's back to back. It's like, you know, it's kind of, I've been feeling it. So amongst projects that we've done for, you know, Channel 9, you know, we did the Adobe Make It titles this year and last year. We did projects for Adobe for the launch of Creative Cloud in China, which, believe it or not, just launched very late last year. And we also worked on Vivid this year on lighting the sails, which I'm going to talk about a little bit more. Also did the Node titles this year, which was really cool. So hope you guys like them. So yeah, it left me very little time for dating. But, you know, around the time we moved into the Burrows, this basically brought me to Renee, because it was around this time that I met Renee on Tinder. And we hit it off, went on a first date, and the rest is history. So we all know what it's like when we, start a relationship with someone you fancy. You want to hang out with them as much as you can. And this was fine at first. You know, the business was under control, and that's why I was jumping on Tinder on the dating apps, had a little bit of time on my side. Met Renee, hit it off, and, you know, then a big job would land. And, you know, time would just, the time would start ramping up, and, you know, I'd spend a little bit more time in the studio, late nights, start working one day of the weekend, then all weekend, you know, and Renee was really cool with this. You know, she really admired the work ethic and had no problem with me working hard, and really supported the work we do, which is probably why I've been able to drag her along to a motion conference. But when these projects would land, like one like Vivid or some of these big projects, you know, it's just all consuming. And when they just take over your life and you're just up against these deadlines and you're racing toward them, nothing else matters. I get stressed, I get tunnel vision. And, you know, I've been guilty. I've been selfish and self-absorbed and completely prioritizing work commitments, over things that have even been important to Renee. So Vivid was one of those projects, and this was hands down the biggest project that I've possibly ever worked on and might ever work on. In March this year, Tim was approached by Ash Bolan from Interrogate and Spin Effects at around the same to work on this project, the Opera House Sales. I'd been working with Tim, so he asked me if I wanted to get involved. And, you know, I was nervous when he asked me. I was really nervous. I was, I was a little bit, I could feel the fear, that fear. Because I knew it was going to be big. How could it not? It's a mega profile project. But, I couldn't say no to that. I was asked to work in a once-in-a-lifetime project. So, I jumped in and said, I'll get in on that. But I could feel it, I could just feel it at that time. Before it had even started, I could just feel this was going to be a really tough one. This is what it felt like, a mission impossible. I'll give you guys a little bit of a breakdown of this project. We had 7 weeks to do this, 7 weeks to do 8 minutes of content, so 8 minutes of 4K content. So there's a lot of canvas to cover, and that's a lot of time to do the amount that we ended up doing. Not a lot of time to do that, sorry. Yeah, that's how I felt. That's how I felt at the start. That's how I felt at breakfast. That's how I felt at night. That's how I felt on weekends. I mean, that feeling didn't let up the entire time. We had 2.5 people to work on this project. The reason I say 2.5 people is because it was myself and Tim full-time, and Dan Brager, who's here today. Dan was coming in 2 to 3 days a week for about 4 weeks of that to give us a hand, which we were really, really grateful for. So Dan, thanks for jumping in on that. This was the amount of hours that we actually toggled that we worked on the project. That's insane. I mean, like if you do the math and work out, that's pretty much, that's not a lot of time outside of working on this project in 7 weeks. 4K delivery, so okay, not full 4K, but as you guys know, that's still a lot of 3D to render. Especially when you've got to do 12,000 frames. And we did over 8 minutes, and we needed handles. So, it was probably about 14 to 15,000 frames. We managed to get our hands on 30 render computers because Tim's got a little render farm at home. So Tim's got about 12 machines at home, and then we've got 4 computers in the studio up on our mezzanine. But the events company that we work with, they were kind enough to let us hijack their computers at night. So we were able to set up team render on these computers and just render on as many computers as possible. We were shifting around 1 terabyte of data. So every time we had to move this to either Tim had to get it home to his machines, or we had to get it over to SpinFX, we were moving around 1 terabyte of data for this project. I think I drank that many cups of coffee, probably more, and there were 2 nervous breakdowns, probably on the way to 3. Like we worked round the clock. I mean, this was one that we worked, like I said, all-nighters and weekends, and this was during the flurry of public holidays, Easter long weekend, Anzac Day, Mother's Day. We didn't enjoy any of them. We were just working. I remember going to the RSL club for a quick Mother's Day dinner for Mum, and quickly getting back to the studio to check renders and make sure we were on track. That day, actually, Mother's Day, Tim was like cleared the schedule because he was looking forward to Mother's Day dinner with his with his wife Fleur, and he calls me in the morning. He's like, "Mike, are you in the studio?" I'm like, "Nah, I'm on the way now." He goes, "Mate, all the team render machines have stopped working." I fucking start running there. I'm running. Tim calls me back. Goes, "Mate, you'll never believe it. We've run out of storage space." Because we weren't set up for a project of this size at this stage, so we'd run out of storage. So I was like, "Oh my god!" So Tim's connected in with his team viewer with his he's basically connected to his computer over from home at work. He's trying to clear stuff off the hard drive. So yeah, absolute nightmare. So imagine the strain that would put on a relationship, let alone a family, like it would have done for Tim. So this was nearly breaking point. I mean, I was fed up. This is nearly breaking point for Renee and I. I was just a broken man. I was a disheveled mess. Like my sister at Mother's Day had even called Renee and said, "What the fuck is with Mike? He's a mess." I think I had the beard out here. I was scruffy. The hair was like I felt like this, like The Walking Dead. It was walk, eat, sleep, piles of mail. You could run a finger on a bench at home. It was just dust, washing. I was wearing t-shirts for the 6th day. It was unbelievable. Renee didn't feel like my girlfriend. She felt like my support person. So I was really lucky. During this time to have Renee on my side. As a relatively new relationship, someone to really support me through this. We're a great team, and I couldn't have done it without her. So Renee's here. She's in the audience. So I just want to say massive thank you. Yeah, you've been awesome. You've been really, really amazing. So thank you. It's the best. So believe it or not, we found this a little bit too late, but had we found this earlier, all our video woes during this project could have been solved with just 3 clicks.
If you want your videos to get attention, they've got to make your viewers go, wow. Animations that you just saw used to be something that you could only create by spending thousands of dollars on software like Adobe After Effects. But now you can join over 6,000 people already using videos to create animations like you've just seen in just 3 clicks.
Look at the lens flare. Wow. Easy as that. Easy as that. Found it too late. So we did it. We pulled it off. Awesome project to work on. So directed by Ash Boland, production done by Lux, Never Sit Still, and SpinFX. Awesome soundtrack by Amon Tobin, Brazilian producer, electronic producer Amon Tobin. So really cool. Of course, this was far more impressive on the Opera House as a canvas, but I thought I'd play a short preview to give you guys a little taste. Thank you. Yeah, that was a really, really challenging project. None of it at all was just sit down and do. Everything had to be R&D'd and problem solved, and that was a project that I worked on with Tim, and I'm so grateful that I got to work on it. I learned a shitload. I spent on those muscles dragging the shelves over. I spent days, like one after like the second or third day of not being able to solve it. I remember going and meeting Renee, and my head was spinning. I could hardly even talk. This was amongst like going, how am I even going to solve this? That's just the muscles of all of this. There was more than that. There was another whole scene after that. So yeah, really, really technically challenging. But we celebrated, Tim and I, with a bridge climb. So you can see Vivid there in the background. So this was a really, really cool way to see the Opera House. I think we got down there a few times, and Barney got down there, I think, 7 times and checks it out. Just one of the best canvases, in the world to see your work on. I've got to say a massive thank you to Rich Nosworthy and Nate from Twisted Poly for jumping in on this project. Rich, just came in and just jumped on it. Cool, casual, just making all these weird creatures, and absolutely awesome to have him on the project. Rich is speaking today, and he's speaking next. And then Nate's from Slovenia jumped in at the 11th hour and helped us with that jellyfish shot. So yeah, got to say a massive thanks to those guys, and awesome to work with them. Of course, with a project of this size, lots of people are involved. So here's a full credit list of all those people who worked on that project. I'd need to do a whole different talk to detail what was actually involved in the process behind this work, but I cut together a 2-minute process reel that I thought I'd share. Thank you. Yeah, it was a big one. Yeah, looking back though, I didn't think it at the time, but I'm glad I did it. I made some comments about it during the project to the team, and I was like, why are we even doing this? And yeah, I'm regretful for saying those things about that project that I'm now in love with so much. So Work-life balance seems to be an eternal struggle for all of us. And I've been thinking about it a lot lately, that in our early years, rite of passage, it almost seems to be rite of passage that, we work our asses off and that we pull all-nighters and work weekends. And believe me, I'm not standing up here talking to you guys because I've had an easy ride. I've had my fair share of all-nighters, late nights, weekends, and early mornings. But over the last few years, there have been a lot of people talking about burnout, and it's not this kind of burnout that they're talking about. Legends in the industry have come forward and talks about, burnout and how much it's impacted their lives, like Robert Leger and Matt Frodsham have documented it in depth, and Motionographer have spoken about it more than one occasion. So I think we've got a problem in our industry. And I've been thinking about it, and I thought for the more experienced ones of us, do we just roll over and accept that this is a young person's game and try and move into roles where we get away from the tools? Or is there a way that we can have sustainable careers, and get older and practice our craft, like architects do and like tradespeople do? They do these jobs until they retire. I don't have the answers, but I think we need to start talking about it because, like I said, we don't talk about burnout enough. We don't talk about work-life balance. We celebrate great work and we all want to do great work and we work our asses off to do it, but at what cost? Because, when I reflect on the last year and I think about the amount of time that I've had for friends, family, and relationships, I've kind of realized that there's more important things than just burning the midnight oil on every project. So, moving forward, there's a few things that I want to get better at. I want to get better at managing clients, deadlines, unrealistic expectations, because what I've realized is that these things can be managed. It's not always easy because I know this is a deadline-driven industry, so it's not as easy as it sounds. I want to try and encourage work-life balance and get myself and the team doing regular hours where it's not where late nights and weekends are the anomaly. They're not the norm. Where regular hours are the norm. Boys, I'm gonna try. All right. Phil started and the bloke's been working pretty hard. I also want to get better at planning for big projects, a little bit more strategic about the big projects. It's really important to take them on projects that you throw everything at. It's incredibly satisfying to do those opening titles for Node and throw a lot at them, and Vivid and Adobe Maker. But when you're doing them back to back, you burn out. And then you realize you haven't seen some of your best mates for months, and you realize you haven't even had much time for your girlfriend, and then or your partner or your family. And I haven't even seen my mum for ages. So I want to get better at managing those big projects. Because, when everything is under control and the studio's ticking along nicely, I'm happier, Renee's happier, we get to enjoy some downtime, have a social life, and get to drink lots of lovely wine together. Thanks very much.
Good job.